Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala amma ba'd. So, brothers and sisters, we are here today for a very noble cause. But I'm going to begin my talk by talking about something that is on our minds. And that is the reality of what is happening in Gaza. And I'm going to ask a question that many of us might be wondering about, but perhaps we're too intimidated to verbalize. And that is, how can we be prioritizing a seminary and raising funds for an institute while there's a genocide taking place? How can we jump over something that is occurring right now, in which 50,000 people have had their lives taken away, snuffed out, exterminated, bombs have fallen on them? Not a single hospital remains untouched in Gaza. Not a single high school or madrasa remains open. 1 million people have been displaced. 1 million people do not have shelter. And here we are fundraising for another cause. That's a very relevant question. It's an awkward question, but it's a question that needs to be asked. And we need to have a very frank conversation about how that's even possible for us to do. Because this question doesn't just deal with one institute. It doesn't just deal with Miftaah. It doesn't just deal with what we're doing here today. This question actually deals with our very purpose for being here. Our very goal, our vision for being here. And therefore, allow me to spend some time answering this question, not just for the sake of tonight's fundraiser, but more importantly, for the sake of our own priorities and visions, for the sake of us reorienting what exactly are we doing in this land? What is our vision? What is our purpose? What is our long-term goal? And based upon that, what is our strategy for getting there? This is not the first time that we have lost Masjid al-Aqsa. This is not the first time that we have suffered defeat. This is not the first time that we have faced the reality of setbacks. In fact, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he demonstrated in his own lifetime that you do not achieve victory, you do not attain success without a series of tragedies and turmoils and pains and setbacks and suffering. No success takes place. No conquest of Mecca takes place without the persecution of the Sahaba, without shuhada, without the setback of Uhud. If we can glean from the seerah that there is no success without the effort, and that effort will require setback, you shall face pain. There shall be a loss of life. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah said, we will test you. There will be people who shall die. You shall lose your crops and your wealth. But glad tidings to the sabirin. When the people of Musa were being persecuted, when Fir'aun was massacring children, every single child born was literally, can you imagine the scenario? Can you imagine the sheer brutality that as soon as the baby is born and there are guards outside, they're going to come in, they're going to snatch the newborn baby and execute that baby right then and there. This is what Allah said in the Quran, يُقَتِّلُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ. They massacred your babies. And in that context, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah Qasas, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. We wanted to favor them, and we wanted to make them leaders. As their sons are being massacred, Allah says, we're going to make leaders out of you. You're not going to become leaders without putting in the requisite effort. And that effort requires testing and trial and tribulation. The Prophet ﷺ sees the reality of what is happening in Mecca. Sahaba are literally shred to bits. The Sahabi whom my father named me after, Yasir, and his wife Sumayya, you all know their stories. Literally shred to bits. And their son Ammar tortured almost to death. In that environment, Bilal is being dragged in the sand. Ahadun ahad. In that environment, the Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ. Hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. He was sitting in the shade of the Kaaba, the holiest of holy. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, for how long is this going to last? Why don't you make dua to Allah and get this over with? أَلَا تَسْتَنصِرْ لَنَا أَلَا تَدْعُ اللَّهَ لَنَا. Why don't you just make dua and khalas, let's move on? I mean, how long are we going to last like this? And he is a Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And these are the greatest people alive after the prophets. And they are being persecuted. And their patience is running a little bit thin. Because humans are humans. And they go, Ya Rasulullah, why don't you just make dua, khalas, it'll be gone. And he was sitting in the shade of the Kaaba. He pushed his body forward. He became into the sun because of that, in order to make his point. And he said, do you doubt the promise of Allah? Do you doubt the promise of Allah? People before you were persecuted more severely than this, and that did not shake them from their commitment to this religion. And then he gave a prediction. He gave a prediction when people could not even imagine safety in Mecca. He said to them, I swear by the one in whose hands is my soul. It's just a matter of time before you shall see a lady go from Hadramaut to Sana'a or Sana'a to Hadramaut. Pause here. In Mecca, the furthest cities they can imagine in the Arabian Peninsula are the two cities of Sana'a and Hadramaut in Yemen. From their perspective, this is like the end of the world from their perspective, right? And these are two cities at the peripheries of the Arabian Peninsula. Not anywhere close to Mecca, central Mecca. A time will come when a lady will travel from Sana'a to Hadramaut alone in the desert. And the only thing she is scared of is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then if a wolf might attack her goats. You're worried about safety in Mecca. I am telling you, we're going to be so safe. Our civilization will have so much izzah that a lady will travel without any entourage, without any bodyguards, and she knows the world is so safe from Hadramaut to Sana'a. You want predictions? The Battle of Khandaq. The Prophet ﷺ is digging that trench when 10,000 of the Quraysh and their allies, their confederates, it's called the Confederate Army because it was a loose tag, ragtag, hired mercenaries for hire. It wasn't just the Quraysh. They literally paid money for all of these tribes to come. 10,000 people marched on Medina. And the Sahaba were barely 1,300. There's no way they could have fought. They didn't have the weapons. They didn't have the training. They didn't have the manpower. 10,000 people around Medina. And they don't have a plan. They don't have an actual mechanism to fight. And so Salman al-Farisi says, let's just dig a trench. And by the way, the digging of the trench was not a solution. It was a stalling tactic. The digging of the trench was not a solution. It's not going to solve the 10,000 people. It's just a stalling tactic. It's just a delay from the massacre that might otherwise happen. And this shows us partial victory is better than no victory. Doing something is better than doing nothing. We have to keep these points in mind because, especially in light of Gaza, we have idealists amongst us who don't understand what strategy and vision is. Partial victory is better than no victory. Stalling a massacre is better than having the massacre immediately. So the trench is literally a tactic to stall. They don't have a solution what's going to happen next, but they don't know what else to do. And so they dig a trench. And in the process of digging that trench, they come across a massive boulder, a rock, that cannot be moved. And it's blocking the trench. They can't go around it. So they go and they say, Ya Rasulullah, there's a big, massive boulder. We don't know what to do. So he himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, give me the axe. And he took his upper garment, wrapped it tightly around himself to have a double lower garment. And he jumped into the trench himself. And he picked up that axe and he said, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And he shattered that axe onto the boulder. All of the major Sahaba tried, they couldn't do this. But of course, he has the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has what no other human being has. And so with that one crack, the boulder begins to break. It doesn't fully decompose, it breaks. The first crack forms. And he looks at that, he says, Allahu Akbar. With this crack, Allah has shown me that the palaces of the elite of Bursa are going to be conquered by my people. Bursa is a city outside of Damascus. Bursa is the first city, when you enter the Byzantine lands, Bursa would be the suburbs for the rich of Damascus. And it's now an hour's drive away from Damascus, right? So Allah has shown me that my ummah will conquer the palaces in that city. Then he raised the axe again. And Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And he shattered it again. And the rock split a little bit more, but it's still there. And he said, Allahu Akbar, with this, Allah has shown me that you shall conquer the palace of Caesar himself. Constantinople will be yours. And then he raised it again. And for the third time, and then the entire rock split up so that they could continue. He said, Allahu Akbar, with this, Allah has shown me that you will conquer the palace of Xerxes, of the ruler of the Sassanid Empire, the Persian Empire, and you shall distribute his ghanima amongst yourselves. You know what is amazing about these predictions? It wasn't just something that is in the long-term future. The Prophet ﷺ's predictions fell on the ears of people who witnessed these predictions in their own lifetimes. They saw Yemen conquered, and they saw the izzah of Islam, that a lone shepherdess could go from Sana'a to Hadramaut without any fear. They were the ones who conquered the Byzantine Empire. They were the ones who conquered the Sassanid Empire. Salman al-Farisi, whose idea it was to dig the trench. Salman al-Farisi was in the battle. And amongst the soldiers, as an 80-year-old man, he was amongst the people who entered his own country of Sassanid Persia. And he reconquered the lands he was expelled from. And the irony of ironies, the palace that he was not allowed to enter because he was a commoner, because he was a low-class citizen, that palace became eventually his house, where he became the governor of the very country he was expelled from. He was made the governor of Islamic Persia. The first governor of Islamic Persia was Salman al-Farisi, the same person who heard the Prophet ﷺ predict. When did he do the prediction? When they were surrounded, there's no hope out. And the Prophet ﷺ said, don't worry, Allah's promise is true. Do you doubt the promise of Allah? Do you doubt the promise of Allah? The Sahaba suffered worse than us. The Prophets, all of them, and our Prophet ﷺ suffered worse than us. But the promise of Allah is always true. And one thing we learn from the seerah and from Islamic history is that victory is not just through one particular tactic. Victory is not sudden. Victory is not immediate. Victory is a long-term, multi-pronged strategy. There are multiple things we need to do in order to attain victory. And yes, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, what they need to do is different. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. But what we are doing over here is a different strategy, a different tactic, which is no less important. It is totally different, but it is no less important. And what is that strategy and tactic? We're going to be very, very clear, very bold. There's a genocide going on. We don't have the luxury of political correctness. Allah has blessed us and Allah has tested us to be where we are. It is a blessing and a test. It is a privilege with responsibilities. Allah has blessed us to be in the very empire and the very superpower that is the primary enabler of that genocide. Let's not mince our words here. Had it not been for this country of ours, had it not been for our governments paying its tax dollars, had it not been for the United States of America and its veto in the UN, had it not been for us aiding and abetting genocide, it would not be taking place. We all know this. SubhanAllah, even European countries are buckling. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, one after the other, they're all pulling back saying, no, we can't do this. Even France, the most Islamophobic of all European countries, even France has said enough is enough. We cannot continue arming a country that is doing genocide. Even France says this. Come on. We're the last country. Of course, England always follows us. Of course, respect nothing. But England always just, we used to be a part of them, but now it's the reversal now. Whatever we do is going to follow. England just following us. And Canada's 50 seconds at utmost. I know the Canadians say, but come on, let's be real guys. I mean, whatever we say is just tabi or tabi, as the but they follow us. When we leave, they're just going to follow along. As soon as this umbilical cord is cut, every other country is going to stop. We know this. This leads us to the question, and well then, what exactly are we doing? I, for one, am incensed and enraged that my politicians and my government and my taxes are being used in the most heinous genocide that has ever taken place in our lifetime. Since World War II, we have not seen such realities. I, for one, am not going to remain silent and quiet. And we need to understand the privileges we have when I say we're not going to remain silent and quiet. Our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, he has undertaken multiple trips to Muslim lands. The last one was last month. Multiple trips to Muslim lands. And you know what his main ask is of those governments? Our own governments. You know what his main ask is? Quiet your people and make sure they don't foment anything about Palestine. And so our own Muslim governments jumped up and said, Sami'na wa ata'na. And they started opening up the doors for dancing and gambling and whatever else is there. There's even Halloween taking place. We don't do Halloween in our own backyard. Now, in places that we're not going to mention, there's Halloween taking place. Entertainments, get them away. And a strict ban on speaking about Gaza. Forget speaking. Making dua for Palestine is banned in some Muslim lands. Even in holy places, you cannot raise your hands and say, oh Allah, help the people of Gaza. If you do so, the police will come and deport you right then and there. If you wear a Palestinian scarf in a Muslim majority country, it is possible the police will come and say, no politicals, no politics, get out of here. Politics, simply wearing a scarf. And so when Mr. Blinken, our Secretary of State, goes across the world and says to their rulers, keep your people quiet, everybody says, Sami'na wa ata'na. And there's not much going on over there. But here's the irony of ironies. Mr. Blinken has the privilege to go to those countries and tell them to keep their people quiet. Yes, who Mr. Blinken has no authority over. The very people who are in his land, because it's my land, because we have something called the Constitution. Mr. Blinken cannot tell me to keep my mouth quiet. And therefore, 6 months ago, when there was the largest protest in American history for Palestine, 500,000 people gathered together in front of the White House. 500,000 people gathered in support of Palestine and against the genocide in Gaza. They invited 2 clerics to speak at that gathering. Alhamdulillah, I was one of them. You can watch the video online. I spoke to 500,000 people on the streets of DC. The White House was behind me. In front of me, you see all of the memorials, all of the iconic sites. And I said on stage, you can watch it on TV, our president is a war criminal. He is aiding and abetting genocide. Enough is enough. I'm not going to allow our taxes to go and kill innocent people. This is under our watch. We're not going to allow it to happen. And I called out my government, my country, my president. And I walked back to my hotel, and not a single person dared stop me. And I flew back home, and not even the SSS came, not even the full SS came. And I challenged anybody, if the FBI dared knock on my door and say, how dare you criticize our president, I would have sued and I would have won in any court of law, because thank God we're Americans, and thank God we have the Constitution that allows that freedom. So I say to you bluntly, is it not shameful that in Muslim majority countries they cannot speak? And in this country of ours we have the freedom to speak, and yet there are some amongst us that are scared to speak? Wallahi, I'm sorry, but shame. Shame. Here we have the privilege. Here we have the freedoms. This is our land. These are our politicians. We have the opportunity to change and shape public opinion. Every single survey has shown that the tide is shifting. You know, our own government is trembling because of a children's app called TikTok, which is definitely not TikTok in every single sense. But, don't you find it absolutely stunning, amazing, sad that our Senate is holding hearings about a children's app called TikTok attempting to ban? And we all know why. Because TikTok was showing video footage directly from Gaza, bypassing CNN, bypassing Fox News, bypassing New York Times. Our younger generation is not getting the news from the sources that the government controls. They're getting news from these apps and these TikTok videos. And so the government is holding hearings attempting to ban this app. They are quaking and trembling in their boots. How can we be silent? Do you understand the impact of our voices? We have collectively shifted the rhetoric of this country. Every single survey shows that those under the age of 30, the majority of them are pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist. Alhamdulillah. And that has only happened because every one of us understands we have a role to play here. We have to claim this privilege and power. We have to effect change. We have to be bold, brave, and proud about this reality. And if somebody here, inshallah nobody in this audience, but just in case, somebody's a secret spy from Fox News, right? And they take out their little recording devices and they're going to take this 5-second clip. Oh, look at these, what did you call them? Islamicists? What did you call them? Islamicists, whatever, okay? You got these Muslims here preaching their stealth jihad in our midst. And they're trying to influence our politics, and they're trying to change our system. In case somebody does have such a clip, you know what? It's high time we own up to this. We are not doing anything illegal or unconstitutional. This isn't stealth jihad. This is the essence of democracy. This is my government. This is my country. These are my taxes. Those are my politicians. I have just as much right to lobby and to influence as you do. What gives you the right to influence and not me? We claim what is rightfully ours. We stand up and we make an influence in this country because it is our country. Claim what is yours and influence as much as you can. That is the goal and agenda, and do not be embarrassed about it. Now, the question arises, how will you influence people? How will you change hearts and minds? How will you carry that message forward? And this is where we come to the projects that are taking place across this country, one of which we're here for today. One of the most important factors for us to carry this project forward is that we need to have the knowledge and the love of Allah and the love of the Messenger and the reality of facts about Bayt al-Maqdis and Masjid al-Aqsa. We need to be armed with ilm and knowledge. We need to carry the spirit of Islam in our hearts. We need to make sure our children and grandchildren after us carry that spirit for generations to come. Masjid al-Aqsa was taken away from us before as well. The Crusaders came and took it for 97 years. For 100 years, we didn't have it. We all know the name of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. We all know his name. But what we don't realize is that Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi never actually saw Masjid al-Aqsa until he conquered it. He was not an Arab. He never prayed there. He had no personal connection. He was a Kurd. He wasn't even ethnically an Arab. He was an Ajam. He was not from that land. So where and how did he get that power, that passion, that connection with Masjid al-Aqsa? He got it because he's a Muslim. He got it because if you love Allah, Allah has called that land Al-Ard al-Muqaddas, Al-Ard allati barakna fiha. He got it because if you love the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you know, you believe ilm al-yaqeen, that our Nabi, our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he walked in that city, he walked in that land, he led salah in front of all of the prophets right over there. If you love Rasulullah, you will love the land that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked on. So every Muslim, every mu'min, every lover of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has a love of Masjid al-Aqsa and Ard al-Muqaddas because of this. That is why Salah ibn Ayyubi wanted to conquer Masjid al-Aqsa. So then the question comes, how will we keep that spirit alive? How will we retain the connection to our faith, our tradition? How will we shape our vision, our values, our ethics, our laws, our morality? And that in and of itself is a project far bigger than only one issue, whether it's Gaza, whether it is... No, to keep Islam flourishing and alive, to keep our children upon our faith. This is a project that is actually the biggest of all projects. And every project stems from this project, which is the preservation of the deen. And this is where we come to exactly what we're doing today. What this country offers us, O Muslims, is the opportunity to do what cannot be done anywhere else. I challenge you to think of any country where a group of dedicated volunteers, a group of people who don't have a government behind them, who don't have the wherewithal of massive, they just come together and they say, let's open up a Sunday school. Let's open up a masjid. Let's open up an institute. And they allow the fruition of this reality from beginning to end. Where else can you have the freedom to do, to plan, to envision, to enact from 0 all the way to 100? Where else can you have an institute like Miftaah? They don't need permission to do what they're doing. There's no checks and balances from the government. You come, you plan, you fundraise, and you build. The sky's the limit, as the saying goes. And what we are seeing of the revival of Islam in North America, it is unprecedented in the globe. Not just Islam itself, not just institutes itself, but the maturity of our thoughts. I want to be brutally honest here. One of our problems is misunderstandings between various movements within the faith. Look, everybody from back home knows this to be the reality. Sectarianism and whatnot. Alhamdulillah, the American Muslim community is, I would say, the best that I have ever seen when it comes to overcoming the pettiness of sectarianism. We have a level of maturity and thought that is, frankly, a breath of fresh air. I am not from the same strand as our Mufti Sabs are. We all know this, he knows this, I know this. Yet here I am fundraising for them with genuine passion. And I know they're going to come and fundraise for my seminary, the Islamic seminary, when we need to do so as well. Different folks, different strokes, different qualities. We all need different things. We all need different realities. And I wish them the best, and I wish my previous institute al-Maghrib the best, and I wish Zaytuna the best, and I wish Qalam the best, and I myself involved with the Islamic seminary, of course I wish it the best as well. We have benefited each other and will continue to benefit each other. Because when I make Miftaah strong, I make the Ummah strong. And when I make the Ummah strong, I have pleased Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all come together under the banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Therefore, O Muslims, we come back to where we started from. What has our fundraiser got to do with Gaza? Everything. Because this is how the next Salah ibn Ayyubi will be preserved. This is how the next mover and shaker will be formed. This is how impact will be created in this land and across the globe. We're going to carry the flag of Islam, the torch of Islam. We're going to make it bigger, brighter. We're going to make it stronger. We're going to make sure that, inshallah ta'ala, our faith, our values has an impact in the lands that we live in, the lands that allow us to have that value and impact. We're going to do that, but the only way we can do that is if we come together and support our institutes, all of these institutes. Each one is doing its own niche. Everybody's doing each one what needs to be done. If we come together and understand, you sitting here right now, you can potentially influence tens of thousands of people. You have the power. Allah has given you that power right now to do what you could not do in any other land. To envision, to strategize, to help, to benefit, to build, to grow. You have the power to set a chain reaction, to be the first domino, to lay a foundation upon which a skyscraper is going to be built. That's what you're doing right here and now. So when you give, not just to Miftaah, to all institutes, to all masajid, to all think tanks, to all centers, when you give, understand one point. You are not just giving for the immediate benefit. You are giving for the generational benefit. You are giving to protect Islam for generations to come, and not just for the right here and now. This is the primary mechanism to keep the spirit of Islam alive and the torch and banner of Islam alive. When you help such institutes, you are directly helping the cause of strengthening the Muslim Ummah, which will automatically tie in to not just Gaza, but to every single positive cause in the world. So Muslims, my plea to all of you is to understand we're at the cusp of an amazing, exciting time frame. I'm going to finish off with one point I always say. We are that one generation, this generation in particular, that truly is the conduit from the past to the future. I'm being very blunt here. There shall only be one generation, and that's ours, that understands the past. I'm speaking to a group of people, half of whom themselves chose to migrate here, and the other half, like myself, were born here. This will be the only generation. The next generation, that will be gone. The connection will be gone. The next generation, that will be gone. This generation is the only generation that is fully in tune with this heritage, fully in tune with the scholarship back home. I studied, he studied, others studied back home, and then we came back and we built institutes over here. This is that one generation that's going to do it. What we do in the next 30 years will shape Islam for the next 300 years. What we do for the next 30 years will shape Islam for the next 300 years, because we are building that foundation. We are solidifying the foundation upon which those skyscrapers are being built. We are the first domino. You are the first domino. You need to think long term about your great-great-great-great-grandchildren, because what you do is going to be the most seminal in influencing your own progeny. And what you do for projects and visions, such as Miftaah, will be the most seminal in shaping the future of Islam in North America. So to conclude, your roles today are not just as individuals. No. You are movers and shakers, you are builders, you are architects, you are engineers, you are visionaries, you are thinking multi-generationally. And projects like Miftaah allow you the opportunity to maximize your legacy and to tap into influencing not just hundreds and thousands of people, but quite literally the future of Islam in North America. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us to be instruments of khair and good. May Allah help our brothers and sisters in Gaza. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see a free Ard al-Muqaddas and Bayt al-Maqdis and Masjid al-Aqsa. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring izzah back to this ummah. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum.